Following the success of Friday the 13th in 1980, Paramount Pictures began plans to make a sequel. First acquiring the worldwide distribution rights, Frank Mancuso Sr. stated, "We wanted it to be an event where teenagers would flock to the theaters on that Friday night to see the latest episode." The initial ideas for a sequel involved the Friday the 13th title being used for a series of films, released once a year that would not have direct continuity with one another, but be a separate scary movie of their own right. Phil Scuderi, along with Steve Minasian and Bob Barsamian, who produced the original film, insisted that the sequel have Jason Voorhees. Steve Miner, associate producer on the first film, believed in the idea and would go on to direct the first two sequels. After Cunningham opted not to return to the director's chair, Miner would use many of the same crew members from the first film while working on the sequels. Adrienne King was pursued by an obsessed fan after the success of the original Friday the 13th and wished her role to be small as possible, though in the documentary Crystal Lake Memories it was stated that King's agent had asked for a higher salary which the studio could not afford. Adrienne King was killed off the franchise. Adrienne King filmed all of her scenes in just 2 days. Amy Steele would be cast as the new lead, playing Ginny. John Fury would be cast as Paul. Lauren Marie Taylor would be cast as Vicky. Kristen Baker would be cast as Terry. Stu Sharna would be cast as Ted. Russell Todd would be cast as Scott. Tom McBride would be cast as Mark. Marta Kober would be cast as Sandra and Bill Randolph as Jeff. Walt Gorney would return as Crazy Ralph. Jack Marks was cast as Sheriff Winslow. Betsy Palmer would return to do a cameo as Mrs. Voorhees. Warrington Gillette played Jason Voorhees unmasked, while Steve Dash would do all the stunt work for Jason. Special effects artist Tom Savini was asked to work on the film, but declined because he was already working on another project. Savini was replaced by Stan Winston. Winston, however, had a scheduling conflict and had to drop out of the project. The makeup effects were ultimately handled by Carl Fullerton. Harry Manfredini would once again score Friday the 13th Part 2. The use of the sack hood that Jason wore was similar to the 1976 film The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Steve Dash was rushed to the emergency room during filming after Amy Steele cut his hand with a machete during filming. Dash received 13 stitches on his middle finger. Although Warrington Gillette is credited as playing Jason, in most of the scenes the character was played by stuntman Steve Dash. Gillette only plays the unmasked Jason in the sequence where he burst through a window. Dash was upset at being uncredited in the role as he had most of the Jason's screen time. One of the biggest mysteries of the Friday the 13th series is if Jason didn't drown in the first movie and actually hid in the forest, or if he did and he rose from the dead to avenge the deaths of his mother and himself. Amy Steele was hoping she would become the new hero of the series since her character didn't die at the ending. Actor Jack Marks, who played the officer, claimed that the only time he had ever driven a car were the scenes in this film and the rehearsals. The counterintuitive plot of Part 2 shocked most people associated with the series. Betsy Palmer, Tom Savini, and Sean Cunningham all have made public remarks about how it was stupid that Jason was alive the whole time, and if he was, then why didn't he just tell Pam Voorhees that he was alive, which would have avoided all the murders in Part 1. 48 seconds were cut by the MPAA to avoid an X rating. The film has one of the longest pre-credit sequences in cinematic history, nearly 15 minutes in some versions. Amy Steele went to a soundstage to record her scream so they could edit it into the final cut of the film. Friday the 13th Part 2 was filmed in New Preston and Kent, Connecticut in August 1980. The actors stayed in the cabins on set. The Packanack Lounge's central cabin sold on eBay for $15,000 in November 2003. Friday the 13th Part 2 was released on April 30th, 1981, bringing in $6 million its opening weekend. It played on 1,300 screens and would ultimately gross $21 million. It was the 35th highest grossing film of 1981, facing strong competition early in the year from such high-profile horror releases as The Omen 3, The Howling, Scanners, Wolfen, Deadly Blessing, The Funhouse, My Bloody Valentine, The Fan, and The Hand. Much like its predecessor, critical reception to the film was initially negative. It has a 34% approval rating at Rotten Tomatoes among 32 reviews. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times wrote that Friday the 13th Part 2 is a cross between the mad slasher and dead teenager genres. About 24 movies a year feature a mad killer going berserk, and they're all about as bad as this one. Some have a little more plot, some have a little less. It doesn't matter. Friday the 13th Part 2 was released on VHS on September 1st, 1998, and on DVD on October 19th, 1999, and on Blu-ray on February 24th, 2009. And the book Crystal Lake Memories, The Complete History of Friday the 13th was released on October 1st, 2006. As well as DVD and Blu-ray versions of the book were released on September 13th, 2013. The film was featured in many DVD and Blu-ray box sets. I hope you've enjoyed this brief history on Friday the 13th Part 2. Join me next time as we take a brief look at Friday the 13th Part 3.